In fact, I was most worried about Yu Jun-hyuk. He was more trustworthy than anyone else here, but at the same time, I couldn't be sure of his position. If Yu Jun-hyuk shook off my hand, then my actions would be useless. Fortunately, Yu Jun-hyuk was calm. He might have a violent temper, but this guy was amazingly good at controlling his anger and sent me a secret message. What are you doing? The character Yu Jun-hyuk has activated Midday Tryst. The item that I had previously bought belatedly came to my mind. I didn't know that the Midday Tryst I registered at the time would still be valid. I deliberately spoke in a brazen manner. I will do this more than once or twice. You should get used to it. What? The conditions aren't bad enough for you. I know that you can't inherit the stories of other constellations. Yu Jun-hyuk flinched at my words. I don't know how you know such things. In fact, declaring a nebula with me wasn't bad for Yu Jun-hyuk. In the progression of the original novel, Yu Jun-hyuk didn't inherit any stories here. It was due to the constraints on Yu Jun-hyuk. The regression constraints. He could turn back the clock after dying, but he couldn't inherit the stories of other constellations. Incarnation Yu Jun-hyuk. Is Incarnation Kim Dokja correct? Are the two of you making a nebula? The Dokja host watching the situation stepped in. Everyone looked at Yu Jun-hyuk while I nervously waited for his answer. Yes. I inwardly sighed with relief. The first hurdle was overcome. However, the real hurdles were from now on. In the complete silence, someone on the second floor laughed. The soft laugh was somewhat pleasant. I could feel Persephone's mood through this laughter. Kim Dokja, you did it after all. This is why I like you. Of course she liked me. Persephone's style fit this type of story. Thanks to her laughter, the other constellations also started to laugh. Most of them were constellations on the second floor. Unfortunately, their laughter didn't contain the same meaning as Persephone. The nebula Vetus is disappointed in you. The nebula Giok despises you. Ariel held a handkerchief to her mouth and frowned at the reactions of the constellations around her. What? Why are you like this? This is good. The constellations on the first floor watched silently. Their eyes contained a mixture of longing and worry. Maritime War God and Bald General of Justice also looked nervous. The one who was most interested was Goryo's first sword, who was looking this way. The laughter died down and a more direct contempt flew from the second floor. A person who hasn't climbed the throne of a constellation wants to create a nebula? Dokja, does this make sense? Can any cat or dog open a nebula? The Dokja seemed confused at the questions that poured towards him. That Incarnation Kim Dokja has clearly received recognition from the star stream. Along with these words, the stories I made were projected onto the ceiling screen. King of a Kingless World. The first scene that appeared was when I destroyed the Absolute Throne by borrowing the power of the 4-yin demonic beheading sword. Strictly speaking, my narrative started from there. Fragments of the throne appeared on the screen. Some constellations nodded like they were convinced, and some constellations looked at each other with astonishment. He broke the throne of divinity? Did he really open with that story? There were probably some attendees who didn't know my information. I thought I was quite famous, but I was still lacking. I suddenly looked around and saw the Russian child staring at me with blank eyes. He who opposes the miracle. The second story was when I took down the returning Myung Ilsong, who was a disaster. Some constellations are favorable towards you. Since the returnees were disliked by the constellations, then this was a suitable story to acquire the liking of the constellations. At the same time, curious expressions appeared on the faces of the constellations. What is this? It was due to the third story that appeared, where I beat up the intermediate Dokja Paul. I was a bit surprised when I saw the screen. I only wanted revenge for Shin Yusung. Was it included in my stories? The Dokja Paul screamed, and the embarrassed Dokja host quickly fast-forwarded. Then the complaints of the constellations were heard. Hey, what is that? It seems to be the wrong data. However, unlike the Dokja's words, a story name appeared on the screen. One who showed contempt for a streamer. Laughter was heard from the landing of the stairs. It was Goryo's first sword who was laughing. This is crazy. Then the fourth story appeared. One who hunted the king of disasters. It was when I hunted the shadow of the constellation Yamata no Orochi in Peaceland. The constellation's mouths dropped open when they saw Orochi killed with my electrification. The shadow of a narrative-grade constellation? He has already accumulated 4 legendary stories. Confusion spread among the constellations. The screen turned off and the Dokja continued speaking. In any case, Incarnation Kim Dokja is now facing the throne of a constellation, if he gains his 5th story through this occasion. Those who knew I was aiming to be a constellation weren't confused, but the other constellations were startled. Becoming a constellation before the 10th scenario was over? He's a new constellation. I suddenly received a lot of heated gazes. Certainly this was a formidable event, even in ways of survival. There were only a few constellations or returnees who had gained the recognition of the starstream before the 10th scenario. In the midst of the increasingly confused atmosphere, it was Manu of Vedas who opened his mouth. I will acknowledge Incarnation Kim Dokja. However, I can't acknowledge the nebula. There are 2 problems. The constellations focused on Manu's voice. 1, if we don't know Incarnation Kim Dokja has a sufficient payment ability, isn't it necessary to have the minimum of funds before establishing a nebula? The coins are sufficient. Turmoil occurred again at my words. Manu stared at me with suspicious eyes. We will know once it's checked. The second problem is who will support your nebula. I gulped. It was finally the real challenge. The establishment of a nebula needs to be supported by at least 5 constellations. Do you have the support of any constellation? That I couldn't easily answer, and Manu laughed. Now, is there even a name for the nebula in the first place? I opened my mouth as I glanced at Eugene Hyuk. The name of our nebula is Kim Dokja's company. There isn't a name yet. In addition, we will gain the supporters now. Eugene Hyuk casually interrupted me. Are there any constellations who want to support our nebula? No one responded to Eugene Hyuk's words. Manu laughed. I knew it. It was a waste of time. Dokja, continue with the story succession. At this time, someone raised their hand. The Olympus underworld will support your nebula. Queen! Persephone's aura rose sharply. It is my decision. Are there any complaints? No matter the strength of Vedas, the constellation Manu couldn't stand alone against Persephone, queen of the underworld. In the end, he turned towards the other constellations. Surely there won't be anyone else. I will support it. The voice came from the second floor, and the constellations were once again amazed. It was the great sage, the equal of heaven. Prisoner of the golden headband? Really? Are you serious? I walked towards him in gratitude. The great sage of the equal of heaven was picking at his ears while looking down here like it was troublesome. I don't know. Sorry. I will also support it. Uriel of Eden declared her support. I will also give you the name of your nebula. The nebula name is forbidden. Oof, oof. The ninth-rate angels around her were flabbergasted and covered her mouth. No matter her intentions, I was thankful. Now the rest of the constellations glanced at each other. The 3 constellations who declared their support were powerful enough not to worry about the others. The rest were different. It was unusual for upper-grade and narrative-grade constellations to challenge Manu just to help establish a new nebula. I looked to the side and saw that Eugene Hyuk had half given up. He messaged me, "It is up to here." I would be blocked here, but I didn't mind. It's okay. My objective was achieved. What? I wasn't expecting anything. The important thing was to buy some time. From the beginning, I didn't intend to inherit the story of any constellation here. I thought of the original novel, and the Banquet's ending was fixed. At this time, something unusual happened. I, Goryo's first sword, will support your nebula. Goryo's first sword declared support for us. Then the upper-grade constellations stood up at once. Then I, maritime war god, the bald general of justice, won't stay still. Once the constellations on the first floor started to support us, the constellations on the second floor and the Dokja became greatly confused. Wait a minute, such a random declaration of support? The next moment, the constellation Secretive Plotter will support your nebula. Huh? Secretive Plotter? Where the hell was he? You have won a provisional nebula creation ticket. Don't tell me. At this moment, the banquet hall started to shake and the space distorted. I looked up at the sky. The banquet had finally ended. They had come. This aura is... Everyone, retreat! Even the constellations became nervous. The sky was greatly distorted and powerful sparks appeared. It was like the sky was splitting apart. The Great Hall. The unknown hall, which only appeared when a scenario was activated, suddenly appeared above the banquet hall. The startled Manu shouted, "The gods of the other world! How did you dare come here?" The constellations roared and raised their own aura. Then a terrible voice came from the hall in the sky. "Why weren't we invited?" Persephone and Uriel instantly blocked my ears and Yujun Hyek's ears. It was to prevent the foreign true voice from intruding. They stood in front of us, lowering the pressure from the hall. "I'm sorry, but the party is over. It's time to go back." "Then I'll see you next time." The moment Persephone and Uriel spoke, Yujun Hyek and I were surrounded by a transparent circle. It was the space transformation using the power of the constellations. They wanted to save us from the terrible battle that would soon take place at the banquet hall. By the way, the god of another world was a bit faster than expected. Wait. The gods of another world are looking at you. The gods of another world are looking at you. At the last moment, I heard Uriel scream, "Kim Dokja!" Then darkness covered my eyes. Who are you? Not recorded in the vehicle. Don't tell me. The last story is finally about to start. Hey, is it here? Is it okay? What if those guys come? It is said that the Maritime Admiral and Pure Steel often come here. Isn't this the hero's grave? A dark night. Several robbers were gathered around the tombstone erected in Gwanghwamun. The leader of the robbers, Li Dongpa, frowned at the terrified people. Pathetic fools! What hero is he? Can a hero die so easily? It wasn't long ago that Li Dongpa learned about the existence of the hero, the strongest man who saved Seoul by sacrificing his life. Of course, Li Dongpa didn't believe the rumors. Now, do it quickly, there's no time, before those dark scum come out. Many people were already participating in the 9th scenario, Dark Castle. However, not all people participate in this scenario, including Li Dongpa. The main scenarios were just festivals for the smart guys like him. It is a hero's grave. Wouldn't there be 1 or 2 good things buried? Search the body as well. He might have hidden things on his body. Shit, he's buried deep. Hey, pick it up. The robbers quickly dug at the ground. Approximately 2 hours passed. But we reached it! Finally, their shovels hit a lid. Their hearts were pounding as they opened the lid. A man dressed in a white coat was sleeping in the coffin. Li Dongpa laughed. A hero? Bah! He's a sleeping princess. He's ugly. The coat is excellent. Strip it off him. What? The shocked Li Dongpa fell down and started shaking. The hero, who had just been dead, was holding on to the shoulder of a robber. Then every being in Seoul heard the following message. Someone has acquired 5 stories. A new constellation is born in Seoul's night sky.